Good morning. All right, so for those of you who may not know me, my name is Amanda and I'm the registered dietitian here at the Wellness Center. So if you have been following along with me, last week we started talking about making healthy choices and cooking some healthy meals using very minimal ingredients, super basic cooking skills, and using mostly shelf-stable, inexpensive ingredients. So last week we talked a little bit about canned tuna and highlighted a couple recipes. Today I wanted to take that same idea and run with it a little bit more. And today I wanted to highlight quinoa. So for those of you who have never had quinoa or may not know what it is actually a seed, but we classify it as a whole grain. And so you make it much like rice. So here's my quinoa right here. So you usually take 1 part quinoa to 2 parts water and you just boil it and then simmer it on the stove and it absorbs the water, just like rice, gets nice and fluffy. And it's really, really good. So there are a lot of health and nutrition benefits to quinoa. It's very nutrient dense. Just to name a few, starting, it's a really good source of fiber. So we know that we need about 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day for your average adult. And so a serving of quinoa has about 3 to 4 grams of fiber, so that's a great start right there. Quinoa is actually a complete protein as well. And so this is a good example of how we can get our protein from non-animal, non-meat sources. And so quinoa is actually a complete protein too, as I said. And so what that means is we have some essential and non-essential amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein, as we know. And so essential amino acids, we actually cannot make in our bodies, and we have to get them from our food. And so we have 9 essential amino acids that we need, and all 9 of those are present in pretty significant amounts in quinoa. Specifically also lysine. So lysine is an essential amino acid that is present in quinoa that is usually absent or present in just very minimal amounts in other whole grains. So even comparing quinoa to other whole grains, it is still really a great source of that complete protein as I was talking about. So it also is a great source of a lot of different vitamins and minerals, as I'm sure you're not surprised to hear. So great source of iron, copper, our B vitamins, magnesium, phosphorus, folate, just to name a few. And it also has some great health benefits to it too. So it has some anti-inflammatory properties with it, and it also is good for our heart health. So it helps in reducing our risk of developing heart disease and helps lower our LDL or our bad cholesterol. So next, I wanted to move on and talk about 3 of my favorite recipes that I make highlighting quinoa. And so they are all super easy to make using, just very minimal ingredients, super basic cooking skills. So just like last week, I am going to type up the ingredients that you need for each one of these recipes as well as the instructions and post them with this video later today. So if you feel really inspired by these recipes and feel as though you want to make them at home, you can just refer to those written instructions so you don't have to go back and watch this video 10 or 12 times. So the first recipe that I wanted to talk about are quinoa pizza bites. So these are literally so good, one of my favorite recipes. I know the last time every recipe I talked about, I was like, oh, this is my favorite one. But seriously, this is like my favorite one. And so definitely what you're going to need is quinoa, about 1 cup of cooked quinoa. So like I said, you cook it much like rice. It has instructions on the package of how to do it. Oh, side note, this quinoa I bought actually at Aldi. You can get it at any grocery store where you normally do your grocery shopping at. I'm not sure how much it was less than $3 though. And quinoa actually comes in a bunch of different colors. So you can get it in black, red, yellow, orange. The one that I have right now just happens to be white. The one that I have is organic, but please don't feel that you need to buy organic foods and eat organic in order to be healthy, because that is not true. It just is a coincidence that I have organic quinoa right now, but usually I don't, so that's totally fine. So anyway, back to my quinoa pizza bites. 1 cup of cooked quinoa, some shredded mozzarella cheese, also a cup of any of your desired pizza toppings. So today I just brought some canned mushrooms. Usually when I make this, I like to put in some spinach or diced bell pepper, whatever really just fresh produce I have on hand that I would like to put in. But since we are really focusing on shelf-stable ingredients, any canned ingredients would be totally fine. So I would just dump these out in a colander, rinse them off, and dice them up and put those in, which would be a really, really good option. So a cup of that. You also need a 4th cup of diced tomatoes. So I usually use just fresh tomatoes just because I usually have those at my house. But if you want to use canned diced tomatoes, that is totally, totally fine as well. 1 egg, and then some seasoning. I use Italian seasoning because they're, pizza, but you can do whatever you want, just black pepper or onion flakes or whatever you normally use as seasoning. And then you're also going to need some pizza topping or some pizza sauce to dip on the side. So what you want to do is mix together all of your ingredients here that I just mentioned in a bowl, and then scoop them into a mini muffin tin. So you can use either a hard tin. I just have this silicone baking sheet. I got this on Amazon like a long time ago, but whatever you have is totally fine. So you can scoop the mixture into this, fill it to the top, and then bake it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes or until they start to get brown. So these are a really easy to eat finger food. So I love to make these just for an easy lunch on the weekend or to pack in my lunch to take to work because they're so easy to eat. So super kid friendly, really good. And then use your pizza sauce to dip on the side. So super easy, one of my favorite ones. So sorry, I'm just going to slide these out of the way. Okay, moving on to my next recipe is a roasted broccoli quinoa bowl. So as I talked about last week, I talked about that tuna rice bowl. Bowls are one of my very, very favorite things to make because you can add or eliminate so many different ingredients. So every time you make them, they can taste so different. So it's so hard to get bored of them because they can taste different every single time you make them. So what you need for this roasted broccoli quinoa bowl is half a cup of canned chickpeas. So drained, rinse them out in a colander in the sink. 1 cup of broccoli. I just have my broccoli florets back here. You can also use, if you want to use frozen broccoli or whatever you have, that's totally fine. I just had fresh broccoli on hand. Half a cup of your cooked quinoa, and then some dressing, whatever dressing you want. I like to use this honey Dijon dressing. So what you're going to do is place your chickpeas and your broccoli on a baking sheet and bake them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 25 minutes or so, just until your broccoli starts to get brown. In the meantime, you can cook your quinoa according to the package directions on the stovetop. When everything is done, you just take your bowl, you layer your quinoa in the bottom, and then top with your chickpeas and your broccoli, and then you can drizzle some dressing on top, whatever your dressing of choice is. So this is seriously one of the easiest things that you can make. It's so quick. You just have to wait for the things in the oven for a little bit, but really good and really healthy. So also, if you make this, then the next time you make it, get creative and you can put whatever you want in it. So let me just set these out of the side. Okay, last one that I wanted to talk about, seriously one of my favorites. Okay, it's just a classic quinoa salad. So salads are one of those other things that are one of my favorite things to make because you can make them so different every time you make them. So for this salad, what you need is about 1/3 or 1/2 cup of cooked quinoa, some cherry tomatoes, 6 or 8 halved, some crumbled feta cheese, and then some greens. So the first thing that you want to do, obviously, is make your quinoa again on the stove. And then what you're going to do is just layer your greens on a plate. So you can use 1 to 2 cups. This is a little bit less than that just because it's just what I brought along with me today. Put it on a plate or in a bowl. I'm using spinach also just because that's what I had in my refrigerator, but you can really get creative with the greens that you use. I love to use kale, or you can use whatever you normally like for your salads. Then you can top with your cherry tomatoes or your grape tomatoes and about a tablespoon or 2 of your crumbled feta cheese. And then you can sprinkle your cooked quinoa on top. So I really like to add this cooked quinoa as another component in my salads because it is warm and kind of brings like a new dimension to a cold salad, which is really good. But if you are making it ahead of time or taking it to lunch or meal prepping ahead of time, you can also just chill your quinoa, put it on the salad and put it in the refrigerator and eat it cold, and that's totally good too. So one other thing that I like to tell people to do is if you are making your quinoa, if you want, instead of using water, to use like a low sodium unsalted vegetable broth. To give it some extra flavor. For these recipes that I am talking about, I usually just use water to make them just because they already have a lot of seasoning and flavor in them, so I don't feel like I need to add more to it, but that's always an option too. So just to end, a lot of people ask me or tell me that they don't like to buy a lot of salad greens or leafy greens because they go bad pretty quickly. So I just wanted to give you a couple tips on how to make your leafy greens last a little bit longer. So the first thing I want to say, encourage you to do, is to really branch out with your leafy greens and your salad greens that you're buying. So a lot of people just tell me, they like to just, rotate between their romaine lettuce and their baby spinach, which is totally fine if you like romaine lettuce and spinach. That's really working for you, definitely stick to it. But I encourage you to, go to the grocery store and pick out some new ones and really experiment with some new greens. So I like to do kale or collard greens, Swiss chard, bok choy, whatever you want. Really get creative with that. So the first thing when you bring it home, I encourage you right away to, trim it. So trim off the stems and the tails of it and wash them. And then make sure that you're drying the leaves and your greens really, really well. So 2 things that really make your greens spoil or go bad pretty quickly is moisture and oxygen. So make sure that you're getting them as dry as you can, and then store them in a plastic bag where you really press a lot of the oxygen and the air out of there, or an airtight container. I also like to put in some paper towels or some clean kind of cloths or some towels in there, so that any of the moisture that I wasn't able to get off when I was washing my greens is hopefully going to be drawn out of my greens and out of my leaves and into my paper towel to kind of keep my leaves as dry as possible. So if you are buying already bagged greens, like bagged spinach or anything like that, I encourage you to kind of check it, daily or every other day, and start to pick out the leaves that are starting to rot and starting to go bad. So what happens is when they kind of start to go bad, they start to emit an ethylene gas. And so that is going to really kind of jumpstart all of the other greens and the leaves in the bag to start going bad pretty quickly. So just get those out of there. We also have some fresh or some different fruits and vegetables that naturally emit that ethylene gas like I was talking about. So apples, pears, and avocados are big ones for that. So just make sure that you're storing your greens and your leaves away from those fruits and vegetables. Additionally, if you have, like some kale that's starting to wilt already and you just want to bring it back a little bit, one tip that you can do is to place your leaves in some ice water for about 15 minutes, and that usually kind of crisps it back up a little bit momentarily. So that's always a good tip that you can do too. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. If anybody has any comments or any questions or about anything related to what we talked about today, please feel free to comment. I would love to read your comments, and I'm sure everyone else would too. If nobody has anything else to say right now though, I'm gonna go ahead and log off. Be on the lookout for my instructions later today for the recipes that we talked about, and I will catch you guys next week. Thank you so much. Have a great day.